In today's video, we'll take a look at how to create groups inside of CometChat using the JavaScript SDK. This will include groups for individual members as well as creating a group full of members too. Let's get started right now. We'll start on the CometChat website. Here you can head over to developers and then over to documentation to head over to the JavaScript SDK. Next, you'll want to select the SDK option, and we're just going to select the JavaScript for the web. Here, we're going to scroll to the menu on the left here to groups, and we're going to have a look at how to create our very first group. Now, to do this, let's open up this option and have a look at exactly what that is. Creating a group is essentially a way of allowing logged in users to create both public, private, and password protected groups. Part of this involves setting up a few things, such as a group class that basically identifies the group ID, maybe the group type, as well as a group password. We need a group type to identify whether it's public, password, or private. Let's actually have a look at some of the code involved in doing this. Normally, the very first thing you'll want to do is identify the group ID. We'll also need a group name as well as a group type. You can have a password, but if you don't want one, leave it blank. We're going to call a new class here, CometChat.group, and put all of this together. We can then use this as part of the create group method, passing in the group and basically calling this method in order to create that group. Be aware, while you can use underscores and letters and hyphens, you can't use space, punctuations, or special characters as part of the group name. Now let's have a look at how we would also add group members to a group before we get started with the coding aspect. We would call a different function here called create group with members. In functions, more or less the same. This is where you'll be able to create a group based on the user IDs that you also have as part of having some pre-existing users in there. We can also ban some users if we want, and we'll take a look at what that looks like. Otherwise, most of the creation is the same, so let's have a look at the code. Here we can see that we create a group, and this group is called supergroup1. Here you can see that the superhero1 user has also been added as a member for the members array. This is done by calling CometChat.groupMembers, identifying the user ID as well as the membership type. We've added band members here as superhero2, and we've put this all together, calling the method create group with members, passing in the group, the members, and the band members. It's okay if this looks a little bit confusing right now. We'll jump into the code shortly to have a look at how it all works. But before we do, let's have a look at the group classes to know what kind of things we can add as part of creating a group. We can add icons, descriptions, metadata, and much more. This can allow you to design the style of your group however you want. Here I've got an example of our latest copy of CometChat that we've been building for the JS project. We're going to define a group ID here. I'm going to call this group group_ID_Adrian. We could even add in a different name, but this should be enough for now. We're also going to define a group name. Here I think I'll keep it nice and simple, maybe hello group Adrian, and then we'll need to define the group type. For the group type, most cases you'll probably just want a public group. So let's have a look at what that looks like. We'll define group type as CometChat.group_type.public, all in uppercase. And finally, we'll define a password. And for public groups, you don't really need a password, so we can leave this blank. You still need to define and pass it into the method later on, so that's why we have it here. Now we can move on to creating and using the class that creates the group. We'll call var group equals new space CometChat.group. Here we're going to pass in all the values we've just defined, which includes the group ID, the group name, the group type, as well as the password, which is currently blank. This will create the group that we can pass into the method for CometChat. So let's do this now. We'll call CometChat.createGroup, and we'll pass the group that we've defined. With that done, we can now execute this on the server by calling this command. Once we do so, we'll get a return or a response, and that will be the group itself. We can console log this out or use this in terms of our UI design. For now, I'll console log it out saying group created successfully, as well as console logging out the group itself. In case there is an error, we can console log this out as well, and that's always good practice. And that's it. We should now allow this public user to create a public group that they'll be existing in. Let's give this a shot by opening up the live server and seeing if it actually worked. This will open up a quick example of this page we've built out, and I'm going to pull this up on the browser. We'll open up the debugging tools and have a look at what's been provided. Here, we'll be able to see that a group was successfully created. And on top of that, it's got some details here about the group itself, such as the name of the group ID, and much more. We can then later use this as well in the UI application state. On top of that, if, for example, we wanted to refresh the page, we would find that we can no longer recreate the group because the group ID, which is unique, has already existed in the system. We're already in this group, and there's no point to remake one that has the exact same name. In the next video, we'll take a look at retrieving groups as well as deleting groups, so we can probably account for situations like this. But for the time being, we'll just ignore this and move on. Now, we're going to have a look at how to create a group with existing members right in there. We're going to copy out the previous group that we have, and we're going to just update it a little bit. This time, the group ID is going to change. This is going to be a public friends group for Adrian, which means that the group name can also change, and this can be Adrian's friends. Now, we're going to define a few extra things here. First of all, let's remove the password since we won't be needing that and anyone can join this group. The next thing we'll need to do here is to define the members themselves. So what I'm going to do is pass in a couple of values here that I'm going to create. They'll be the unique IDs of my friends. The very first friend will be defined as friend UID of superhero1. Another friend UID will be called superhero2. We need to now create an array that basically covers all of these users. So I'm going to do this by creating one more value here called members. Members will be an array of all the friends that I want added to the group when the group method gets called. This does require specific syntax, so each one of these will be calling to create a class called new space CometChat.groupMember. We're going to pass in the user ID in here, as well as the CometChat.group_member_scope with .participant as being one of the options here. Then we're just going to copy paste this out twice and paste in the friends UID in here. This should be enough to create the members that we currently have in here, and there are other options for group member scopes that you can check out in the documentation. But for the time being, we can define one last thing here, which is the banned members. Since they're already banned, we don't have to define a scope for them, since it's already assumed that they're just in the banned scope. We can now put this all together and call the function to create the group. This function is pretty much the same, we just update the syntax for this method. Instead of calling create group, we call create group with members. Of course, we'll have to pass in the members, so let's pass those in, and let's also pass in the banned users. That pretty much covers how to create a group with users in there. Let's actually open this up in a console and have a look how it's working. Here I've saved the page and opened up Chrome. We can see that the group was successfully created. The response is a little bit different here. We get the members that were in the group as well as the group and its details. Here we can see that Adrian's friends group has been created, and at the bottom here we can see the members of that group. There aren't specific as to the role here. We do note that Superhero 3 is banned, but it successfully shows that all of them have been added to that group. Just like last time, we can refresh the page, and if we do so, we'll find that we can no longer recreate the exact same group as we had before. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. In future videos, we'll take a look at exactly how to modify and edit groups, as well as delete them or change how many members are in there, or even ban users. I think these will be really useful things to be able to do, especially if you want to have full control over the kinds of groups that you create. If you want to learn more about those videos, you can check them out up here. Awesome.